Today's episode is brought to you by Proud Wolves. It is Proud Wolves' mission to make sure children all over the world have free access to cultural activities and sport. Proud Wolves helps organizations to change their income models and stops them relying on membership fees for children. Find Proud Wolves on Facebook for more information. Now, get ready for your All-NBA Team of the Week.
Goeiedag, enchantée, and welcome to this week's episode of 824 Presents All-NBA Team of the Week. Last week, we lifted the veil on 5 teams chasing the bottom of the standings and the number 1 lottery pick. This week, we focus on 5 teams in contention for the play-in games. But before we start, I'd like to address the teams that float around in no man's land. Teams like Washington, Cleveland, Toronto, and Sacramento. These teams win too much to be on the bottom of the league, but not enough to make it to the 10th spot in their conference. Technically, I should include OKC with these teams as well, but they are clearly tanking, which is why I included them in last week's episode. The funny thing is that because of the lottery rules, these teams have almost as much chance of securing a high lottery pick as the 5 teams we discussed last week. This week we have picked 5 teams in the Eastern Conference currently fighting for the 6th spot and avoid the play-in game. We've not included Chicago because they're almost definitely securing 10th spot, but are not in contention right now to move up in the standings. Same with Atlanta. Of all the teams currently fighting for a spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs, I have the most confidence that they will make it. Next week we'll pick 5 teams out of the Western Conference. Get ready for our All-NBA Team of the Week.
Pick 1!
First pick of the week are the Charlotte Hornets. Currently sitting in 4th spot in the East, they are the highest ranked team we have included in this week's picks. The 4th spot would give them home court advantage in the playoffs, and it's very important to be able to avoid the stronger teams in the first round. Charlotte played exceptionally well for the most part of the season, but have been hit with injuries lately. Rookie of the Year contender LaMelo Ball is likely out for the rest of the season with a fractured wrist. They lost their main man Gordon Hayward with a foot injury. They will keep him sidelined until at least the playoffs start. And lastly, their 6th man Malik Monk has been out for almost 2 weeks now with an ankle injury. They still managed to win more games than expected, but it is expected that they will drop in the standings. The Boston Celtics, who sit in 7th, are only 1 game behind the Hornets, so they could drop quite quickly. Getting to the playoffs is a big deal for the Hornets. The last time they made it was in 2016 when they lost in 7 games against the Miami Heat. But overall, in the last 20 years, they only made it to the playoffs 5 times. 3 of those under the ownership of Michael Jordan. The all-time great has not been able to improve the record of the Hornets in the last 10 years. The Hornets usually fall outside the top 8, but because of his desire to win, they never tank and have been stuck in no man's land for almost a decade. This season, things are different. They ended up with the 3rd pick in the draft. It has been since 1992 that they could draft within the top 4 and selected LaMelo Ball has been fantastic, dominating on the court and has proved the whole NBA that their doubts about him were unfounded. The Hornets also managed to secure Gordon Hayward at the beginning of the season, who was looking for a fresh start after a difficult and injury-riddled period in Boston. Not only the new guys are performing well, the rookies they drafted in previous years, Miles Bridges and PJ Washington, are showing signs of massive improvement. The team is led by guard Terry Rozier, Scary Terry, who's having an amazing season himself. The Hornets are a fun team to watch, definitely a league pass favorite for many, and it would be great for them to see them again in the playoffs. If they can't hold on to their current spot, hopefully they will get their best players back for the play-in games so they can compete with their best teams. They deserve to make it to the playoffs this year, first time in 5 years.
Pick 2!
Second pick of the week are the New York Knicks. Fans are in the street cheering and celebrating. If you don't follow basketball, you'd think that the Knicks have just won the NBA, but they're not even the best team in their own city right now. The neighbors from Brooklyn are leading the Eastern Conference at the moment and have the most exciting team in the league. But Knicks fans, they don't care. Their team is finally relevant and playing for a playoff spot. Coach Tom Thibodeau expressed before the trade deadline that this roster should be able to play a role of importance in the playoffs, and the front office kept their best players together, so the team has a fighting chance. The Knicks sit in 8th spot, only 2 games behind the Hawks and the Hornets, who sit in 5th and 4th spot. The Knicks haven't played any kind of role in almost a decade. The last time they made it to the playoffs was in 2013 when they beat the Celtics in the first round but lost against the Pacers in the second round. Star players on those teams were Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire for the Knicks, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett for the Celtics, and a young Paul George for Indiana. That should give you an idea how long ago that was. Fans in New York have been pining for a turnaround, and then, in 2019, they ended up with the third draft pick. They selected RJ Barrett, one of the three super talents in that year's draft class, next to Zion Williamson and Ja Morant. All of a sudden, the fan base was hopeful. Management changed, and at the end of last year's season, they picked a new coach, Tom Thibodeau. Tibbs is known for strong defensive teams and has turned this roster into a defensive juggernaut. The Knicks allowed the least amount of points of any team in the league. They can stop almost any team, and they nearly stopped the Nets earlier this week, losing by only 2 points against an unstoppable Kyrie. The Knicks will make it into the playing game at the very least, and I think there is nobody who would put money against the Knicks right now in a single game elimination. And who wouldn't want to see a Knicks-Nets playoff series in the first round of the playoffs?
Before we move on, I'd like to talk to you about A24. A24 was created by Proud Wolves with the intention to provide children with an opportunity to learn and play basketball at their own pace and completely free. A24 created different courses to improve your basketball skills that are available on the website, but our real mission is to help disadvantaged children by building and upgrading basketball courts around the world, and to give them basketball gear to play with. Come and find our website and please buy a t-shirt to support our cause. Now back to All-NBA Team of the Week. Pick 3!
Our third pick of the week are the Indiana Pacers. After starting the season really strong, the Pacers have really struggled to win games lately. Both Domantas Sabonis and Malcolm Brogdon have missed a few games lately and haven't played at their normal level. New recruit, Caris LeVert, has only been playing for a month after being ruled out due to cancer surgery on his kidney, and he's still looking for his spot in the rotation. TJ Warren, who was a monster in the bubble last season, is sitting out the season with a foot injury. The Pacers are doing it tough, and it shows in the standings. The Pacers currently sit in 9th spot, just behind the Knicks, but still have 2 games to catch up, and yet their story doesn't feel as positive as the Knicks story does. That's because the Pacers were sitting in the top 3 for a very long time earlier this season. They started really strong, with Brogdon and Sabonis really dominating on the court. Even the loss of Victor Oladipo didn't seem to trouble them too much. But then, in February, they started to lose games, something they didn't really recover from. It was so bad that Sabonis almost missed out on the All-Star game, only making it as a replacement. But if the Pacers are one thing, they are resilient. They will work out a way to get through this rut and be competitive again when the time comes. LeVert is feeling more comfortable in the rotation, Sabonis is looking better, and Brogdon is back as well. If the bench players like TJ McConnell and Doug McDermott can keep up their effort, the Pacers will be a threat for that final playoff spot, because they know they don't want to be where they are now. They are too good for where they are right now.
Pick 4!
Our fourth pick of the week are the Boston Celtics. The Celtics have been one of the most up and down teams. They started the season really strong, but dropped off mid-January when Jason Tatum missed some games due to COVID and struggled for a few weeks. Then they had another run towards the All-Star break and they seemed really strong, but that didn't last either. That takes us to their last run, winning 4 of the last 5 games. And again, they look very strong. Tatum dropped 53 points, a career high in the win against the Timberwolves. If one thing has become clear this season, is that Tatum and Jaylen Brown need help. The roster isn't strong enough. Kemba Walker is a great point guard, but his body is unreliable and he's missing too many games this season. Marcus Smart is a beast on the defensive end, but he also wasn't available enough so far this season. Obviously, you can't help injuries, and all they need is a good run to find their form from last year to stop the noise around the team. GM Danny Ainge didn't believe it was necessary to make drastic changes. At the trade deadline, the Celtics were rumored in trades with all 3 of the Orlando Stars and ended up with Evan Fournier, the worst one of the 3, with all due respect. That was the biggest splash they made, but it is questionable if it is big enough for the Celtics to beat last year's loss in the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami. The Celtics' biggest problem this season is their defense, one of their strong suits normally. If they can get things rolling on the defensive end, they will cause problems for most teams in the playoffs. I'm not doubting that they will make it to the playoffs, even if they have to get through the play-in games first. They're much stronger than the other teams in the play-in places and should be able to get through quite easily. If they can hold on to the 7th spot they're currently in, they will only need to win one game to get into the playoffs. They'll be likely to meet one of the 3 better teams in the East, like Philly, Brooklyn, or Milwaukee. There are 2 teams in the East, in my opinion, that can beat any team on any day, and that's Boston and Miami. So a slow regular season doesn't mean that they can't be successful in the playoffs.
Pick 5!
Our 5th pick of the week are the Miami Heat. The Heat have struggled with injuries all season and have had a hard time getting to a good position on the ladder. They finally made it into the playoff positions, and it is likely that they'll hold on to one of these until the end of the season. Of all teams we have discussed this week, the Heat are the most likely to avoid the play-in games. I have them included though, because it's been a few times this season that I thought the Heat had found their form and they ended up disappointing me. But I feel confident in saying that they are closer to the 4th spot than they are to the 7th. The Heat rely heavily on superstar Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Buckets is fantastic for the Heat when he is on the court and has dragged them to some hard-fought victories. But because they rely so heavily on him, he's had to play a lot of games he wasn't ready to play. Jimmy's been injured for stretches of this season, especially early on, but has been forced back a few times to help the team out. Guys like Goran Dragic and Tyler Hero have not been contributing as much as last year, and it shows. But as usual, Pat Riley has made some changes at the trade deadline that have improved the team significantly. Trevor Ariza and Victor Oladipo were added at the trade deadline and have already shown that they will improve the roster. And, also as usual, Riley had to give up very little in return. Yes, Kelly Olynyk was very important for the Heat this season, but if all the other role players start pulling their weight, he will be forgotten pretty quickly. That leaves us with their other star, Bam Adebayo. Bam has had a very good season so far, no doubt about it. But it has not been good enough yet. He has not taken a big enough step for Miami to do better than last season. But he still has time. If he can show up in the playoff, Miami can be the outsider for the NBA championship again, just like last year.
This is our All-NBA team of the week. Please share our podcast and give us 5 stars. If you have any questions, you can contact the show on 824office@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Ballers out.